Hi, everyone. Harry here to talk about a pretty significant development in the ongoing saga of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. To remind everyone very briefly, he is shipped down by accident as one of the first folks in March because they admitted it was by accident, even though they since tried to retreat to different kinds of justifications. He's really become a flashpoint in the whole Alien Enemies Act litigation. And finally, after quite a lot of pressure from Judge Zinnes, whose case, habeas corpus case, is before the administration agreed to bring him back and did so with the intervention of Marco Rubio in a way they at least portrayed was an act of great heroism and heavy lifting. It all seems pretty dubious, as does, you've got to say, everything they've been talking about with Abrego. That's how he prefers to be described, Abrego, in the whole saga. So all the things they were saying while he was down there to try to make the case, oh, he's a dangerous criminal anyway, so no harm, no foul. A lot of it really has seemed to be completely just on their own say-so, as, most importantly, is the document that now is the legal center of what's going on. That is a criminal complaint filed in the Middle District of Tennessee accusing Abrego of both transporting undocumented immigrants and participating in a conspiracy, a long-standing 9-year conspiracy to do the same. From the start, when that complaint issued, so they bring him back and then boom, bring him right to the Middle District of Tennessee to face these charges. They always seemed pretty tenuous and thin. We knew about a stop that had happened in October 2022 with the Tennessee state authorities, where they see 8 other migrants basically in the vehicle that Abrego is driving. He says he's transporting them from job to job. They let him go with just a warning about an expired license. The indictment that was put together and that the Attorney General made such a big deal of and used both the 4 corners of the indictment, but really went well beyond the 4 corners in a patently improper, prejudicial way. I have a whole Substack about this. Tried to make him out to be the very, very tough customer and nasty career criminal they've always said, even though the grand jury doesn't charge it. They basically say for 10 years, this has been his whole job, and he has entered into this conspiracy and made him out to face, because of conspiracy law, which subjects the defendant to criminal liability for all the acts. Because of that, they've really exposed him to a fair bit of possible criminal jeopardy. But now, for the first time, they have to put up or shut up, at least a little. And that is in the hearing that the government has brought to say, we want to keep him incarcerated while the pretrial for his charges goes forward. And he says no. And just this weekend, the judge, a magistrate judge in Tennessee, agreed with Abrego. That does not happen very much. The government says put him in, and the defendant says no, and it's not fair, and they haven't made out the circumstances under the statute for pretrial detention. But Holmes agrees with him, agrees that he's not a flight risk. He is here, by the way, with his wife and children, whom he hasn't seen since back on March 15th are here. He's got a regular job and the like. Now, a few things that are really noteworthy about this opinion saying I'm going to spring them. First, the fact itself that I am not going to permit I'm going to deny the government's motion to keep him incarcerated during pretrial. That's one. Second, in doing it, the magistrate judge, Barbara Holmes, really casts a jaundiced eye on these allegations that the attorney general made and that are built into the indictment, but the way they got them, it's clear. And I sussed this out at the time. They went to different people who were members of the conspiracy, especially this one guy who was supposedly running the taxi service and says he had Abrego drive migrants on multiple occasions. They used that to construct an idea that he entered into a conspiracy for 10 years. But the magistrate is really pretty skeptical about this and points out in particular that each of the people who have been brought into the indictment and make these hearsay statements have a lot to lose or a lot to gain by cooperating. It's quite clear, notwithstanding the lavish praise that Bondi laid on for the police work. What they did was go to a few people who are in jail, offer to basically cut them, reduce their sentence or at least move the courts to do it if they will give inculpatory information about Abrego. They all do, but it's very sketchy information. I don't know if it'll hold up in court if it comes to it. I think the examinations of the co-conspirators will be bruising. And I think it would be really to the good of the country for it to come out just how sketchy and over dramatized this whole thing is. And the immediate concern that I've sketched out is, will they somehow get him with really, tough leverage to plea? And that would make this whole revelation that would otherwise occur go away. Because if this goes to trial, I think the U.S. will be embarrassed. And it's not just that I'm rooting for the U.S. to be embarrassed, but they I think, politicized and lied about what they had on Abrego to try to cover up their own screw up in sending him down. Okay, so that's one thing that Holmes points out. We've got these folks, but they all really have really strong motivations to concoct, massage, exaggerate, and the like. And then second, their core allegation has been that he is a longtime MS-13 member, gang member. They've put it in the indictment. The Attorney General made a big deal about it. Okay, it's now their time to try to keep him incarcerated and deny bail pending appeal. And that's what happens when they have the motion, they have the burden. And what did they say about this? Pretty much nothing. They just repeat the conclusory allegation that he is. And the magistrate says, might have thought he'd have some kind of criminal record if he is this long-standing career criminal, and his record is totally clean. It looks like he's got a regular job, again, completely contrary to what the DOJ has been saying. So you have the magistrate, one, really significant if she gives him bail pending appeal over the objections of the U.S. Two, the evidence is really proven to be pretty threadbare of not that one stop, but that's really all they have, the building around it through the co-conspirators, and three, their core allegation to the country. This is a criminal case that got way beyond the immediate context, right? This is, Trump saying again and again he's a bad guy. This is the phony tattoos, the picture of that Trump looks at. This is multiple representations from the Attorney General that he is a lifelong criminal, just the kind of guy, worst of the worst, that Trump says the immigration authorities are focusing on. And so maybe they made a mistake here, but he's still the right kind of guy. When it's put up or shut up time, if they want to keep him incarcerated, they really seem to have very little. And then the final point, and it's an important point, do they want to keep him incarcerated? They've made it clear, if he gets bail pending appeal, they're going to snag him immediately and bring him into the immigration system to try to deport him on their own. It'll be much easier to do that than to convict beyond a reasonable doubt. Of course, Bondi has said, we insist we're going to charge him here, have him do his jail here, and then deport him. So that would be giving up on the whole criminal charges. But the Tennessee authorities, the federal authorities have represented that's what will happen. It gives the magistrate some pause to say, is this just an academic exercise? But she says eventually, no, it's more important than that. This is his due process rights. These are mistakes the U.S. has made. These are representations that are pretty tenuous. And I'm going to provide for bail, even acknowledging that it may not give him a day of freedom, an hour of freedom. And again, this is a guy who has been locked up for a few months down in El Salvador incognito. One meeting with a Senator Van Hollen, who went down to talk to him at the other jail he'd been transferred to, but otherwise no one had spoken to him. He had spoken to no one. So just completely put into almost a gulag, you could say. Now is back here, but still hasn't been in liberty. And now they're really making noises to try to deport him, even though that's not the plan that they said they would do before. But that would be another way, it seems to me, that all the facts that I think they are so far over their skis on will just not come out if they put him directly into the immigration system. Of course, even there, and especially now, as a high-profile guy, they're going to have to make certain showings. It's easier there, and there are ways for the sort of say-so of the Secretary of State to really be the pivotal factor. So if they are bound and determined to deport him now, contrary to the plans they made, contrary to all the allegations they made about crimes he'd done in the U.S. that they want to redress, it looks likely they'll be able to do it, and which would make for very sort of anticlimactic's the wrong word, unsatisfying conclusion to this whole saga, because the U.S. would never have to sort of face the music of having, on the heels of sending him down there mistakenly, basically concocted a whole bunch of information to make it look palatable to the American people, and so much of it seems to have been highly exaggerated at best. Okay, the next thing that's going to happen here is later in the week. The magistrate has not released him yet. She says, I'm going to craft an order that releases him. She's made that clear, but will set certain conditions, which you can do. Of course, you can grant conditions for bail. So that's what's going to happen. Maybe the parties will argue over it, and I think we'll get more illumination of the point whether the DOJ is now going to immediately funnel him into the immigration system and seek to deport him from the country, as seems to be the widespread expectation of the judge and the parties. And that would, basically put a sort of blanket over this whole episode and make it go away. Perhaps he's rejoined wherever they send him to with his wife and kids, but maybe not. They live here. But anyway, we're going to have the actual order with actual conditions. Once that order is entered, he'll be a free person as far as the criminal charges go. But then we expect the U.S. to come in quickly and harshly to put him in the immigration system, keep him detained, and try to deport him. So stay tuned for that, which is coming up in a day or two, and then we'll see what the end game is for this episode that the administration so terribly botched, and then seems to have lied about, why mince words, in the aftermath. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.